Commander Vextorin sighed deeply as he watched the human delegation storm out of the Grand Hall. His four eyes blinked in rapid succession, a nervous tic he'd developed during his 300 cycles of diplomatic service. The sound of the massive obsidian doors slamming shut echoed throughout the chamber, causing several delegates to flinch. Well, he muttered to his aide, that went about as well as teaching a Merklat perform quantum calculations. His aide, Pilrix, a slender being with iridescent skin that shifted between shades of green and blue, nodded solemnly. Should we alert the Defense Ministry? Vextorin barked out a laugh that contained absolutely no humor. And tell them what? That we have potentially antagonized the most terrifying species in the known universe? I'm sure they will be thrilled. The rest of the Galactic Council sat in stunned silence. 37 species represented, the most advanced and enlightened civilizations across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, and not one of them had anticipated the humans would actually walk away. Ambassador Drelna of the Sith Confederation, her scale body coiled tightly around her hover platform, was the first to break the silence. They can't possibly be serious. No species has ever rejected a council directive before. Apparently, Vextorin drawled, humans aren't particularly concerned with precedent. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was supposed to inspire awe and promote harmony. Carved from a single asteroid of pure silver vein marble, with a transparent dome ceiling revealing the spectacular nebula beyond, it had hosted peace talks between warring factions for over 10,000 years. Today, however, it felt more like a tomb. This is absolutely preposterous, huffed Council Elder Queljaw, his tentacles quivering with indignation. We offered them a perfectly reasonable compromise. The Draxians would withdraw from 3 of the disputed systems, and the humans would cede mining rights to the outer planets. It's more than fair. Vextorin pinched the bridge of his snout, feeling a headache forming. Fair by whose standards? The Draxians initiated hostilities by harvesting resources from planets already colonized by humans. Primitive colonies, corrected Ambassador Lozak of the Draxian Empire, his metallic exoskeleton gleaming under the hall's ambient lighting. Barely more than outposts. How are we to know they be so territorial? Perhaps, Vextorin suggested with exaggerated patience. The human flags planted on those worlds might have been a subtle hint. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The humans had joined the galactic community only 50 cycles ago, practically yesterday in cosmic terms. Most species had spent centuries, if not millennia, under the Council's guidance before being granted full membership. The humans, with their alarmingly rapid technological advancement, had been fast-tracked in the interests of galactic stability. That decision was looking increasingly questionable. We need to understand what just happened, said Pilrix, bringing up a holographic display of the meeting transcript. Ambassador Thorne's final statement was quite concerning. The hologram flickered to life, displaying the imposing figure of Admiral Jackson Thorne, Earth's primary representative. His dark skin contrasted sharply with his white diplomatic uniform, his expression one of barely contained fury. Since the Galactic Council seems incapable of upholding its own charter regarding territorial sovereignty, the recording stated, humanity will take appropriate measures to defend what is ours. We did not journey across the stars to be subjugated by yet another empire. The unified Earth government hereby suspends all diplomatic relations with this body until such time as our grievances are properly addressed. Good day. What did he mean by yet another empire? Asked Queljaw, genuinely puzzled. Vextorin sighed. Humans have a complex history. Their planet was once divided into numerous competing nations. Many of them experienced colonization and conquest. It's left them with a rather pronounced aversion to outside interference. How positively primitive, scoffed Lozak. One would think they'd have evolved beyond such territorial instincts by now, says the representative of a species currently attempting interstellar expansion at the expense of others. Vextorin replied dryly. Before Lozak could retort, the chamber's emergency communication system activated. A harried-looking Tellurian operator appeared on the main view screen, antennae twitching frantically. Esteemed council members, we have detected multiple human warships exiting FTL near the Draxian colony in the Epsilon Indi system. The chamber erupted into chaos. Council members shouted questions, demanded explanations, or simply stared in disbelief. Vextorin felt his secondary hearts begin to race. This was unprecedented. No species had ever dared to defy the Council so openly, let alone resort to military action after peace talks. How many ships? Vextorin demanded. Initial scans show 17 vessels, Commander. Classification unknown, but energy signatures suggest advanced weaponry. Ambassador Lozak had gone rigid, the bioluminescent patterns on his exoskeleton flashing in alarm patterns. This is an act of war. The Council must respond immediately. Deploy the peacekeeping fleet. Vextorin shot him a withering look. The same peacekeeping fleet that hasn't seen actual combat in 800 cycles against humans who have spent most of their history fighting each other. An excellent suggestion. What would you propose instead, Commander? Asked Elder Queljaw, surprisingly calm given the circumstances. I propose we actually listen to the humans for once, Vextorin replied. They warned us repeatedly about Draxian encroachment. We dismissed their concerns as the overreactions of a young species. Now we are facing the consequences. The view screen flickered again, this time showing a different Tellurian operator. Council members, we have just received a transmission from Admiral Thorne. It's being broadcast on all frequencies across Epsilon Indi. Put it through, ordered Queljaw. Admiral Thorne's face appeared on screen, now dressed in military uniform rather than diplomatic attire. His expression was stone cold. Attention Draxian forces occupying human territories in the Epsilon Indi system. You have 1 standard hour to begin evacuation procedures. Any Draxian vessels or personnel remaining after this deadline will be considered hostile combatants. This is your only warning. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. He can't be serious. Ambassador Lozak finally sputtered. Our mining operations represent an investment of billions. We have over 3,000 personnel planet-side. Then I suggest you start evacuating them, Vextorin said quietly. Because if there's one thing I have learned about humans in my time studying them, it's that they rarely bluff. This is absurd. Lozak slammed a metallic appendage on the table. The Council cannot allow this precedent. What happens when every minor species decides they can simply ignore diplomatic protocols and resort to military action? Perhaps the better question is, how do we fail so badly at diplomacy that the humans felt this was their only recourse? The chamber fell silent again, each member contemplating the implications. The Galactic Council had maintained peace among its members for millennia through careful negotiation, compromise, and occasionally strategic pressure on weaker species. The humans, despite their newcomer status, had just shattered that paradigm completely. Commander Vextorin, Queljaw said finally, your expertise on human psychology is needed now more than ever. What should we expect? Vextorin took a deep breath. Based on their historical records, which they have been surprisingly open about sharing, humans are remarkably consistent in conflict situations. They deliver clear warnings, establish firm boundaries, and then enforce those boundaries exactly as threatened if violated. They call it credibility, so they will actually attack. Lozak asked, his bioluminescence now pulsing erratically. Without hesitation, confirmed Vextorin. And with every passing minute, you are losing time to evacuate your people. Ambassador Drelna uncoiled slightly, her forked tongue flicking anxiously. What of our peacekeeping fleet? Surely we must deploy it to prevent hostilities. Vextorin laughed humorlessly. With all due respect, Ambassador, deploying our fleet would only escalate the situation. Humans interpret shows of force as challenges, not deterrents. If we send ships, they will view it as the Council taking sides with the Draxians. That's not a confrontation we want. So we do nothing. Lozak practically screeched. Allow them to dictate terms through threat of violence. Actually, Vextorin said, I recommend we formally acknowledge that the disputed systems fall under human jurisdiction, as per the territorial sovereignty clauses in our own charter. We should also open direct communication with Admiral Thorne, separate from the Draxians, to demonstrate our commitment to impartiality. Appeasement, spat Lozak. Correction, Vextorin countered. We're simply upholding our own principles. Principles we conveniently overlooked when the Draxian Empire began its expansion. The view screen activated once more. The operator appeared even more distressed than before. Council members, human warships, have taken position around all Draxian installations. They have deployed smaller vessels that appear to be boarding shuttles. We are also detecting activation of planetary defense systems on the human colonies. Lozak rose from his seat, his exoskeleton now flashing bright red patterns of rage and fear. I must contact my government immediately. This session is a waste of precious time. As he stormed toward the exit, Vextorin called after him, I suggest you advise immediate compliance with the evacuation order, Ambassador. The humans have given you an exit strategy. I recommend taking it. After Lozak's departure, the council chamber buzzed with nervous conversation. Species that had barely interacted in centuries were now huddled together, discussing implications and potential outcomes. Vextorin found it darkly amusing that it took a human threat to finally unite the fractious council. Pilrix approached, datapad in hand. Commander, I have been analyzing the human fleet deployment. It's concerning. How so? Their ships are positioned not just to blockade the Draxian installations, but to intercept any incoming vessels as well. If the Council does deploy the peacekeeping fleet, they're prepared to engage it, Vextorin finished grimly. Of course they are. Humans always plan for worst-case scenarios. Elder Quel'Jah hovered over, his ancient eyes reflecting the starlight from the dome above. Commander, the Council is prepared to vote on your recommendation to acknowledge human territorial claims. Already? That's uncharacteristically decisive. Quel'Jah's tentacles twitched in what might have been a smile. Fear has a way of expediting bureaucracy, Commander. No one wishes to discover firsthand what human warships are capable of. The vote was swift and nearly unanimous, with only the Draxian allies abstaining. The Council would officially recognize human sovereignty over the disputed systems and open direct diplomatic channels with Admiral Thorne. Vextorin prepared the communication. He couldn't help but wonder if this marked a fundamental shift in galactic politics. For millennia, the Council had operated on principles of consensus, compromise, and gradual change. The humans, with their directness and willingness to back words with action, were introducing an entirely different approach. Transmission ready, Commander, Pilrix announced. Vextorin nodded, composing himself. Admiral Thorne, this is Commander Vextorin Zal of the Galactic Council. I'm pleased to inform you that the Council has voted to formally recognize human territorial claims in the disputed systems, in accordance with our Charter's sovereignty provisions. We request a direct dialogue to resolve any outstanding issues and prevent unnecessary conflict. The response came faster than expected. Admiral Thorne's face appeared on screen, expression marginally less severe than before. Commander Zal, I acknowledge your transmission. The United Earth government appreciates the Council's decision to uphold its own charter. As a demonstration of good faith, we will extend the evacuation deadline by 3 additional hours to ensure the safety of all Draxian personnel. However, our position remains firm. These systems are sovereign human territory. Vextorin felt a wave of relief. Thank you, Admiral. If I may ask, what are your intentions regarding the Draxian installations after evacuation? Admiral Thorne's expression hardened slightly. Once we have verified complete withdrawal, we will conduct thorough inspections. Any technology that can be safely repurposed will be incorporated into our colonies. The rest will be dismantled. We have no intention of wasting resources, Commander. That's a luxury humans have never had. The subtle rebuke wasn't lost on Vextorin. The Galactic Council, with its abundant resources and ancient technologies, often forgot that younger species operated under different constraints. I understand, Admiral. The Council hopes this resolution will serve as a foundation for renewed diplomatic relations. That, replied Thorne, will depend entirely on the Council's future actions. Humanity values consistency, Commander. We will judge you by your deeds, not your words. Thorne out. As the transmission ended, Vextorin turned to find Elder Queljaw watching him closely. An interesting species, these humans, the Elder observed. They have achieved in one day what many council members couldn't accomplish in centuries, forcing us to actually follow our own rules. The question is, Vextorin replied, what happens next? The Draxians won't forget this humiliation, and other expansionist powers will be watching closely. Queljaw's ancient eyes seemed to look beyond the chamber walls, perhaps into the future itself. I believe, Commander, we are witnessing the end of one era and the beginning of another. The old consensus-based diplomacy that has served us for millennia may no longer be sufficient in a galaxy that includes humanity. You don't seem particularly troubled by that prospect, Vextorin observed. Change is the only constant in the universe, Queljaw replied philosophically. Perhaps the Council has grown too comfortable, too set in its ways. These humans, with their direct approach and unfamiliar perspectives, might be exactly what we need. As the Council session adjourned, Vextorin remained in the Grand Hall, gazing up at the nebula visible through the transparent dome. Somewhere out there, human warships were enforcing boundaries that the Council had failed to respect. It was humbling, and more than a little frightening, to realize how quickly the balance of power could shift. Commander, Pilrix interrupted his thoughts. We are receiving reports that Draxian forces have begun evacuation procedures. It seems they are complying with the human demands. For now, Vextorin replied. But this is just the beginning, Pilrix. The galaxy, as we have known it, has changed forever. As if to emphasize his point, a notification appeared on his datapad. An official communique from Earth's unified government. The subject line read simply, Terms for resumed diplomatic relations. Vextorin couldn't help but laugh, not even waiting for the dust to settle. Typical humans. 3 lunar cycles had passed since the humans had stormed out of the Grand Hall, and Commander Vextorin Zalt found himself in the unusual position of preparing for a meeting that no protocol manual had ever anticipated. The Galactic Council, in its 10,000 years of existence, had never been summoned to another species' territory for negotiations. Until now. Remind me again why we agreed to this, grumbled Ambassador Drelna, as their diplomatic vessel approached Earth's orbital command station. The massive structure gleamed like a silver crescent against the blue-white backdrop of humanity's homeworld. Because, Vextorin replied, straightening his formal vestments, we are not exactly in a position to dictate terms anymore. The events following the Epsilon Indi incident had sent shockwaves through galactic society. The Draxians had indeed evacuated within the extended deadline, but not before attempting a desperate last-minute strike against the human fleet. The resulting battle had lasted precisely 7 minutes and 23 seconds, ending with the complete destruction of 3 Draxian warships and the capture of 2 others. The humans hadn't lost a single vessel. It's undignified, Drelna continued, her scales shifting color with agitation. The Council has always hosted diplomatic summits on neutral territory. Vextorin snorted. I believe that's precisely their point, Ambassador. Nothing about our previous diplomatic approach worked for them, so they are rewriting the rules. The delegation consisted of 7 Council members, representing the major power blocks within galactic society. Notably absent was any representative from the Draxian Empire, which had been temporarily suspended from Council activities pending an investigation into what was now being called territorial aggression. Elder Queljaw floated serenely nearby, seemingly untroubled by the unprecedented circumstances. I find this all rather refreshing, actually. In my 800 cycles of service, this is the first time the Council has been forced to truly adapt. With all due respect, Elder, said Ambassador Krull of the Towering Collective, his bovine features set in a permanent scowl. This sets a dangerous precedent. If we capitulate to human demands now, what's to stop other species from challenging Council authority? Perhaps, Queljaw replied mildly. The better question is why any species would feel the need to challenge our authority in the first place. Their conversation was interrupted by the ship's announcement system. Approaching final docking coordinates. All delegates please prepare for arrival procedures. The diplomatic vessel glided smoothly into an enormous docking bay within the orbital station. Vextorin was struck by both the efficiency and the military precision on display. Dozens of human personnel moved with purpose around the bay, while several armed guards stood at attention near the docking port. This wasn't just a diplomatic reception. It was a carefully choreographed demonstration of capability. "They are making a point," Vextorin murmured to Pilrix. "Everything we see is intentional, including that." Pilrix replied, gesturing toward a massive viewport along one wall of the docking bay. Through the viewport, clearly visible against the backdrop of space, hovered 3 human warships. Their sleek, angular designs bore little resemblance to the rounded, aesthetic vessels preferred by most Council species. These were machines built for one purpose only. Especially that, Vextorin confirmed as the delegation disembarked. They were greeted not by Admiral Thorne, but by a human female in what appeared to be civilian attire rather than military uniform. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple style, and she wore a tailored blue suit that Vextorin recognized as formal diplomatic or from his studies of human culture. "Esteemed delegates of the Galactic Council," she announced, her voice clear and authoritative. "I am Director Amara Bennett, appointed representative of a unified Earth government. Welcome to Artemis Station. If you will please follow me, the Diplomatic Corps has prepared appropriate accommodations for your various physiological needs." Vextorin stepped forward. "Director Bennett, we were expecting Admiral Thorne to receive us." The woman's expression remained pleasant, but revealed nothing. "Admiral Thorne has been reassigned to oversee security operations in the recently reclaimed territories. I assure you, I have full authority to conduct these negotiations." Another message, Vextorin realized. The humans were showing that the military phase of operations was concluded. Now it was time for civilian leadership to establish new terms. Subtle, yet unmistakable, the delegation was escorted through wide corridors that buzzed with activity. Humans of various ethnicities and several recognized non-Council alien species worked alongside each other with remarkable coordination. Vextorin noticed that many of the information displays featured real-time data from across human-controlled space, including the disputed, now officially human, territories. Their destination was a large, circular chamber with a panoramic view of Earth below. Unlike the Grand Hall on the Council homeworld, this room was designed for functionality rather than intimidation. A circular table dominated the center, with specially designed seating to accommodate the various physiologies of the Council delegates. "Please, make yourselves comfortable." Director Bennett gestured toward the seats. "Refreshments suitable for each of your species have been provided. We will begin formal discussions in 15 minutes. As the delegates settled in, Vextorin couldn't help but appreciate the thoroughness of human preparation. Each delegate had not only appropriate seating, but also environmental controls tailored to their species' preferences. His own station featured the slightly higher temperature and humidity that Zentarans found comfortable. "They have done their homework," he remarked to Pilrix. "Indeed, though I notice there are several empty seats at the table," his aide replied quietly. Vextorin counted. 7 seats for the Council delegation, presumably 1 for Director Bennett, and 5 additional empty places. Before he could speculate on their purpose, chamber doors opened again. Director Bennett returned, now accompanied by 5 individuals of varied appearance. 2 were unmistakably human, but the others— "Is that a Pelorian?" gasped Ambassador Drelna, staring at a tall, willowy being with luminescent patterns flowing across pale blue skin. "And a Vorqual," added Krull, indicating a stocky, reptilian figure with prominent cranial ridges. Third non-human was even more surprising. A Meridian, recognizable by its translucent exoskeleton and compound eyes. The Meridians were a notoriously isolationist species that had rejected Council membership centuries ago. Director Bennett took her place at the table. Allow me to introduce the representatives of the Independent Systems Alliance. Ambassador Takashi Yamamoto of the Mars Colonies, Governor Elena Durand of the Proxima Settlements, Chief Diplomat Lyrax of Peloria, Trade Minister Grex of the Vorqual Confederation, and Observer ZT Havoc of the Meridian Consensus. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Vextorin's mind raced to process this development. En Alliance, the humans hadn't just been defending their territory. They'd been building a coalition of their own. Elder Queljaw was the first to recover. This is unexpected, Director Bennett. We were under the impression this meeting concerned bilateral relations between Earth and the Council. Director Bennett smiled in a way that didn't quite reach her eyes. The unified Earth government believes in transparency with our allies, Elder. The matters we will discuss today affect all members of the Independent Systems Alliance, not just humanity. These species, Ambassador Kroll said stiffly, with the exception of the Meridians, fall under Council jurisdiction. Any separate alliance without Council approval violates numerous charters. The Vorqual representative, Grex, let out a sound that might have been a laugh. The Council's jurisdiction has primarily meant exploitation of our resources while offering minimal protection or representation. The humans, at least, treat us as equals. We are not here to debate the legitimacy of our alliance. Director Bennett interjected smoothly. That's already an established fact. We are here to discuss how the Galactic Council and the Independent Systems Alliance can coexist peacefully moving forward. Vextorin watched the Council delegates exchange alarmed glances. This was far beyond what any of them had anticipated. The humans hadn't just defied Council authority. They'd created an alternative power structure entirely. Perhaps, Vextorin suggested, hoping to defuse the tension. Director Bennett could outline the specific topics for today's discussion. Gladly, Commander. She activated a holographic display in the center of the table. A galactic map appeared, with highlighted regions indicating both Council space and what was apparently Alliance territory. The latter was considerably more extensive than Vextorin had realized. We will be addressing three primary concerns, Bennett continued. First, formal recognition of Alliance sovereignty over these designated regions. Second, establishment of equitable trade agreements between our respective territories. And third, a mutual defense pact against external threats. Mutual defense. Drellna's scales flashed in surprise. Against what threats, exactly? The Council has maintained galactic peace for millennia. The human male, Ambassador Yamamoto, leaned forward. With respect, Ambassador, the Council has maintained peace among its members by subjugating or isolating non-members. Our long-range exploration vessels have encountered species beyond the Council's awareness that represent potential dangers to all of us. Another bombshell. Vextorin fought to maintain his diplomatic composure. The humans had apparently been conducting unauthorized exploration beyond established space, something strictly regulated by Council edicts. These alleged threats, Kroll said dismissively, even if they exist, would fall under Council security jurisdiction. We have protocols. Your protocols, interrupted Chief Diplomat Lyrax of Peloria, voice melodious despite the harsh words, left my people defenseless when Draxian mining operations poisoned our moon's atmosphere. It was human environmental engineers who developed the purification technology that saved thousands of lives. Vextorin noticed Elder Queljaw watching the exchanges with what appeared to be fascination rather than alarm. The ancient being had survived countless political upheavals in his long life. Perhaps he recognized this as simply another evolutionary step in galactic politics. I believe, Queljaw said softly, commanding attention through his very calmness, that we should listen carefully to what the Alliance is proposing. The galaxy is clearly changing, whether we approve or not. Director Bennett nodded respectfully to the Elder. A wise approach. Let me be clear. The Alliance is not seeking conflict with the Council. We recognize the value of your ancient institutions and knowledge, but we also recognize the need for reform, for greater autonomy among developing worlds, and for more direct action when threats emerge. The holographic display shifted to show a series of proposed border demarcations and trade routes. It was immediately apparent that significant thought had gone into these proposals. They weren't hasty demands, but carefully considered long-term plans. These border arrangements, Bennett explained, would formalize existing realities while providing buffer zones to prevent future territorial disputes. Trade agreements would benefit both our civilizations, with particular emphasis on technological exchange in non-military sectors. Vextorin studied the proposals with growing admiration. The humans had masterfully balanced strategic advantage with genuine offers of cooperation. They weren't seeking to dismantle the Council, but to establish themselves as an equal power while leaving room for collaboration. And what happens if the Council rejects these terms? Ambassador Krull demanded, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Ambassador Yamamoto replied evenly, then we would continue to develop independently, establish our own diplomatic and trade networks, and defend our territory as necessary. But all parties would lose the benefits of cooperation, which would be regrettable. The implied threat hung in the air, made all the more potent by its subtle delivery. Vextorin recalled the human warships visibly displayed outside. Not a coincidence, but not an overt threat either. Just a reminder of reality. I propose, Vextorin said, breaking the tense silence, that we approach these proposals point by point, beginning with the territorial boundaries. There's clearly room for productive discussion here. Over the next several hours, the delegates worked through the proposed agreements. To Vextorin's surprise, the humans and their allies proved remarkably flexible on certain details while remaining absolutely firm on core principles. They bargained in good faith, but without desperation, as equals rather than supplicants. During a brief recess, Vextorin found himself standing beside Elder Quelja at the viewport, gazing down at the blue-white sphere of Earth. "They are remarkable, aren't they?" the Elder mused. "In just 50 cycles, they have managed what other species couldn't accomplish in thousands. Building an alliance against Council wishes is hardly an achievement to celebrate," Vextorin replied, though without much conviction. Quelja's tentacles rippled in what Vextorin had come to recognize as amusement. Is that really what they have done? Or have they simply created an alternative for species the Council has neglected? Vextorin considered this. "You almost sound as if you approve." "Perhaps I do," the Elder admitted. "The Council has grown complacent, Commander. We have confused stability with stagnation. These humans, with their brief lives and relentless drive, remind me of what galactic society was like in its more vibrant youth. They are dangerous," Vextorin warned. "Of course they are. All agents of change are dangerous. But they're also necessary." Quelja gestured toward Earth. "Look at them, barely united among themselves, their planetary ecosystem still recovering from centuries of abuse, and yet they have already established colonies across multiple star systems and formed alliances with species the Council has failed to integrate. Their ambition is matched only by their adaptability." Before Vextorin could respond, Director Bennett approached. "I hope the accommodations are satisfactory, gentlemen. More than adequate," Quelja assured her. "I was just admiring your homeworld. It has a certain vitality to it." "Thank you, Elder. We are rather fond of it, despite its flaws." Bennett's expression grew more serious. "I wanted to speak with you privately before we reconvene. They're the matter of some delicacy that isn't on the official agenda." Vextorin tensed. "Which is?" "The Draxians," Bennett said simply. "Our intelligence suggests they are massing forces beyond their recognized borders. Not against human territories, but against the Pelorian outer colonies. Quilias tentacles stillet. This is concerning news. The Council would certainly not sanction such aggression. Perhaps not officially," Bennett agreed. "But after their humiliation at Epsilon Indi, they are unlikely to directly challenge humanity again. The Pelorians, however, have limited defensive capabilities. And you're telling us this because..." Vextorin prompted. "Because how the Council responds will determine the true nature of our future relationship," Bennett stated flatly. "If you enforce your own regulations against the Draxians with the same vigor you have historically applied to lesser powers, We can build genuine cooperation. If not, she left the sentence unfinished, but the implication was clear. This puts the Council in a difficult position, Vextorin noted. The Draxian Empire has significant influence among certain factions. Indeed, Bennett nodded. Just as protecting our allies is non-negotiable for us. I thought it best to address this directly, off the record, before it becomes a crisis. As they returned to the negotiations, Vextorin found himself re-evaluating everything he thought he knew about human diplomacy. They were simultaneously more direct and more nuanced than he had given them credit for. They made their positions unmistakably clear while still leaving room for face-saving compromises. The final session produced a preliminary agreement that would have been unthinkable just 3 lunar cycles ago. Formal recognition of the Independent Systems Alliance as a sovereign political entity, demarcation of respective territories, establishment of joint security protocols in contested regions, and formation of a bilateral council to address future disputes. As the delegates prepared to depart, Director Bennett approached Vextorin one last time. "Commander, a moment." He nodded, curious. "Admiral Thorne spoke highly of your insights during the initial crisis," she said. "He mentioned that you seem to understand humans better than most of your colleagues." "I have made a study of your species," Vextorin admitted, "though clearly I still have much to learn." Bennett smiled, genuinely this time. "The unified Earth government is establishing a permanent diplomatic mission to the Council. We'd like to request that you be appointed as the Council's liaison officer." The request took him by surprise. "That's not standard protocol. Neither is anything else about our relationship," Bennett pointed out. "We need individuals on both sides who can see beyond established patterns and historical prejudices. Your record suggests you might be such a person." As their ship departed Artemis Station hours later, Vextorin stood at the viewport watching the Earth recede into the distance. The human diplomats had been simultaneously more formidable and more reasonable than anyone had anticipated. They had leveraged their military victory not to dominate, but to secure a place at the table, albeit a place of their own design. "You're considering their offer, aren't you?" Pilrix asked, joining him at the viewport. "It would be an unconventional assignment," Vextorin acknowledged, "but potentially historic," his aide suggested. Elder Quel'Jad drifted over, his ancient eyes fixed on the now distant blue dot of Earth. "You know, Commander, in my youth, I witnessed the aftermath of the Great Schism when the Meridians left the Council. Many predicted it would be the beginning of the end for galactic unity. And instead," Vextorin prompted, "instead, it forced the Council to reform many of its most oppressive policies. Sometimes, Commander, the greatest service one can perform for an institution is to challenge it." The Elder's gaze shifted to Vextorin. "These humans will change our galaxy regardless of what we do. The question is whether we will shape that change or merely react to it." As if to emphasize his point, a priority communication alert chimed on Vextorin's datapad. It was a report from Council intelligence. Draxian forces were indeed mobilizing near Pelorian space, just as Director Bennett had warned. "It seems," Vextorin said quietly, "that we will face that question sooner rather than later." Ambassador Krull approached, his expression troubled. "Commander, have you seen this report?" "The Draxians are—" "Yes, Ambassador. I am aware." "The Council cannot appear to be influenced by human intelligence or concerns," Krull insisted. "It would undermine our authority." Vextorin felt a surge of frustration. "With respect, Ambassador, that kind of thinking is precisely what led to this situation. The humans didn't undermine Council authority. We did that ourselves by failing to uphold our own principles consistently." To his surprise, Elder Quel'Jad made a sound that might have been laughter. "Well said, Commander. Perhaps you are indeed the right person to serve as liaison to these humans." As the diplomatic vessel engaged its FTL drive, leaving the Sol system behind, Vextorin found himself contemplating a galaxy fundamentally changed. The humans had not only secured their place among the stars, but had established an entirely new paradigm for interstellar relations. They had abandoned peace talks only to forge a more meaningful peace through strength and principle. The Galactic Council would never be the same again. And perhaps, Vextorin reflected, that was exactly what it needed to end the silence of the ship's observation deck. He drafted his response to Director Bennett's offer. The future of galactic diplomacy would be written in unfamiliar terms, and someone needed to help translate. Computer, he dictated, begin transmission to Director Amara Bennett, Unified Earth Government. Subject, liaison position acceptance. The stars streaked past the viewport as the ship accelerated toward Council space, carrying with it the seeds of a new galactic order, one in which humanity would no longer be underestimated.